Hi guys, I'm here with Owen from Team Hycon. Hi Owen, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So how are you finding the conference today? And
Oh, it's really exciting. There's so much going on around here, and there's some really interesting projects. I love being able to talk to some of the engineers and find out what their project involves and what really makes it different from other projects.
Right, and let's talk about our project, which is Hycon. So what makes Hycon unique?
So my role in Hycon is to really understand a lot of the research and try and work out how we can apply that research to make Hycon much more innovative and much more interesting. So I guess recently we've been focusing on scalability. At the moment we're not doing too bad. It's still just using like the same consensus model as Bitcoin with a few changes, but we're only getting about 100 TPS at the moment, about 100 transactions per second. I'm really hoping that in a month or two we can upgrade to Ghost and probably double that, maybe to about 200 transactions per second.
That's very good, that's exciting. And what else are you working on in terms of like hardware and wallets and things like that?
Yeah, so we've just finished our ledger integration. So that's probably the safest way for people to store their cryptocurrency. They take the private key and they store it in a little piece of hardware, like a little USB device, and that private key is never exposed to any of the other computers or software. And so that way you can be completely certain there's no malicious software reading your private key or stealing funds from you. And that's probably the best way to store your wallets or store your private key. And we've been looking at other projects too. So another really popular hardware wallet is Trezor. So we've just got our Trezors into the office and we're just looking at how to integrate them. That's probably going to be the next one. There's a few other interesting ones. So I've heard of a couple of smaller projects like Bitbox. And while I've been at this conference, we saw another one called FuseW. That's like a little card which connects to your phone by Bluetooth. It seems like a good solution. I'd like to find out more about it and see if we can integrate it with Hycon.
Now you recently launched the Light Wallet, which was very, very popular.
Yeah.
How about Android and also iOS? How's that coming along?
So the Light Wallet's really nice. We wrote it in a way that makes it really easy to transport it to other devices, and it seems to run perfectly on your iPhone or on your Android device, but we want to improve the UI to make it much more easier to use while it's in your hand rather than on a computer screen. So I think once that's complete, we'll release fairly soon. I guess we'll have to wait for Apple to give the iOS approval, but it should be out on the Android store immediately.
And when you said about the ledger, is there a roadmap timeline for that when it will be released?
So I think we've got it in the current iteration, and I think it was ready to be released now. So within the next few days, we'll publish our next software update, version 7, and everyone should be able to use ledgers. However, you will need to wait for Ledger to give their approval so you can install the software on their device. That's going to probably be August, early August. We'll have to wait and see.
Very good. You're kind of one of the guys that was behind Spectre and implementing Spectre.
Yeah,
Can you explain Spectre?
So Spectre is some really interesting research. I'm not involved in the original paper or anything, but I read the paper and I thought it was a really interesting approach to scalability. And I feel like it tackles one of the key problems around scalability in a blockchain. So what's interesting is that when you're generating blocks, occasionally two blocks can be generated simultaneously, and they're essentially competing. One might have one set of transactions and another might have another set of transactions. And unfortunately, only one can be chosen for the next part of the blockchain. So one's going to get chosen and the other one's going to get discarded. And when you start to increase the speed of the blockchain, there are more and more discarded blocks. So you get less and less efficiency, and it just can't scale if you naively lower the block time. So the research of Spectre is about how to have two blocks be recombined together so that you don't have to throw away either one of them. The real challenge in that is there could be a transaction in this one and a transaction in this one that are incompatible. So you could end up trying to spend more money than you have available to spend. So the challenge in the algorithm is searching for those double spends and eliminating them in a fair way that every computer can agree on. The real challenge is getting that agreement, that consensus between all the different nodes about which one to accept and which one to eliminate. Spectre seems like a great approach to this, and we've implemented a couple of test versions in the office, and we think it can work, but we're going to do some larger scale testing, and we're hoping that in the next year or two we can roll that out into software that everyone can use.
Now, one of the big keys about blockchain is obviously the buzzword decentralization.
Yeah.
However, we've found that some projects are not actually decentralized at all. Can you talk about why decentralization is so important?
Okay, so I think let's first mention why so many projects are going away from decentralization towards centralization. So I think it's really hard to get all of the computers in a decentralized network to agree on something. And it's much easier when you reduce the amount of computers to get a quick agreement. And so it's more centralized, but you get much faster agreement, much faster consensus. So you can have a lot more scalable solutions. You can grow to much higher volumes of transactions. The thing that I think is really important about blockchain, though, is decentralization. The reason why I think it's so important is that if we're all partaking in a consensus, if there are more people, it results in a fairer outcome. And if there's only one or two parties, then it's open to abuse. So you see platforms like YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, these are owned by one company. And if that company's CEO makes a decision that the users don't agree with, then the users have no choice but to just carry on using that platform as it is. If you don't like the new update to YouTube, well, tough, you've got to accept it. YouTube has made that decision and you've got no control over that. But in a decentralized application, then all of the users who are contributing to the control and development of the network, then they all have an ability to influence the outcome of what is happening on the network, meaning that you can get a lot more fairer decision making. I think that the key idea here is that if you look at something like a dictatorship, a few people control all the power. And for the average person, you end up with really unfair outcomes. So the best solution to that we found so far is a more democratic society where everyone can partake in the consensus. Everyone has a chance to contribute to what they think is right versus wrong. And though they may be voting selfishly, overall, I think it results in a much fairer outcome.
So Hycon is a proof of work and also ASIC resistant mineable coin. Why did you decide to go down that route and not another option like proof of stake, for example?
So I think in future we'd like to look at proof of stake and how to do it fairly, but I think the research is still evolving. One of the most promising pieces of research is probably from Ethereum, Casper. Casper seems like a very promising way to do proof of stake. They haven't yet decided to deploy it yet. We'll see what they do over the next few years, but there's a lot of good research there. But proof of work is proven, and that's like probably the most popular way to achieve a decentralized network at the moment.
So currently, if someone wants to mine Hycon, is it possible?
Yeah, so if you want to do it completely independently, you can download the software and set up your miner and mine alone. But you're probably not going to get very many rewards. You're going to probably end up waiting. Probably going to end up waiting up to a month to get just one reward. But if you want to, you can join a group. There are maybe 4 different groups at the moment who have set up mining pools. These people are collecting all their hash rate together and trying to make it so there are more regular payouts, so that each miner can get their payout more regularly. So
tell us about a mining pool that you are particularly involved in.
So one that comes to mind is minehycon.com, easy to remember. There is Codev, there is Free Hycon, and there is HBore's pool. So there's 4 pools at the moment. I'm looking forward to seeing what other people do. I think other people are going to make some pools. I think it's really interesting. Hycon is using Kryptonite at the moment. The main reason that we decided to use that is that it's very difficult to generate a machine that mines it better than consumer hardware. So anyone can go and buy a fast CPU like an AMD Threadripper, which has lots of threads, for example, or they could buy a GPU, just consumer-grade hardware, and then they can effectively mine the cryptocurrency. Unlike Bitcoin, which uses a different hash algorithm, and it has resulted in special machinery being made, and it turns out that the people with these special machines, ASICs, that's what they call the machines, they get a lot more hash power and a great advantage in controlling that network. Part of trying to keep it decentralized and keep it under everyone's control was picking a hash algorithm that could be used on consumer hardware, and there wouldn't be a market for ASICs. Sadly, it seems like this is a difficult challenge, and it seems like the best way to avoid ASICs on the network is to change the hash algorithm every few months. So if you look at a coin like Monero, they modified kryptonite to try and prevent ASICs from mining Monero on their network, and this is probably the best approach that we have in the moment. We're using the same hash algorithm as kryptonite, as Monero.
And you're always reading research into the blockchain space. What new research have you read recently that has caught your eye?
Oh, what research have I read recently? So recently I've been far too focused on development to really look at new papers, but there's so much coming out. I think one of the pieces that I find most interesting and most promising is Ethereum's research into sharding and Casper. This seems to be one of the more promising approaches, but they've got lots of great research. I recommend going to their forums and checking out what the conversation is about and trying to see what they're trying to do.
In 1 year's time, where do you see Hycon?
So I hope in a year's time we've got a lot more efficient software with a much higher throughput, and I'm really hoping that we can have the scalability grow so we can start building things on top of it. So one of the first plans that Glossopher really wants to do is a decentralized exchange, but I think as the scalability grows, we can start to build all these different types of decentralized applications.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, Owen.
Thank you very much.
And have a great weekend.
Have a good day.
Partner Summit.